here's all of this guy's DVDs, because at that time we had DVDs, and we also had probably, at that time it was probably, you know, cassettes. Take it home, watch everything he's done, and if at the end of the day you come back to me and you say, he's the only guy that can play this role, I will go to all my bosses, including Don, and I will fight with you. But if there's any probability that he's not, then you have to give me the opportunity to suggest something. And he said, okay. So Taylor Hackford went home, he watched everything, and of course he came back the next morning and said, well, okay, I can't say to you, he's the only guy that can play the role. And I don't know where this came from, I really don't. I just turned to him and said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to change the whole thing and hire Luke Gossett. And Taylor Hackford looked at me and said, that is like a great idea. And we called Luke Gossett's agent, brought him together with gear, and I think that's an example where I can't imagine that movie without Luke Gossett. It totally changed the tone, it changed the dynamics, it changed everything in the movie. So that's the best example of something I was personally involved in.
Cool. Let's kick it out to the audience. You guys, yes, ma'am.
So I'm curious about why not more films are actually cast here. A lot of European studios will come here and they'll cast everything out of LA. Can you say anything about what the hesitation is about trying at least for some local talent?
Well, you know, first of all, two things I think happen. Number one, when you're first putting together a film, which I'm always involved in, because usually when I get a script, I have no one attached. You're basically casting it out in Hollywood because the person that's financing it, whether it's an individual, a company, or a studio, usually wants to have somebody in it that they've heard of. So that's really why most of it starts in Hollywood. The other thing is, when we're looking for something like, for example, as I stated on Green Lantern, when we're looking for somebody and we're open, because we would have gone with an unknown on Green Lantern, we would have gone with the best person that we could have found. We sent it to Texas. So if you were in Texas and you were able to go on tape in your agent's office or in your house, we saw it. We got 1,300 submissions in terms of tapes, you know, or in terms of, you know, sending it on the internet for that role. So you wouldn't come to an outside location unless you're kind of shooting there most of the time. But we always, what we usually do is the LA casting director usually hires someone in Texas. Like here, I've worked with 2 or 3 casting directors in Texas when I've been here. I haven't been in Fort Worth, but I've been in Austin. And so we do hire people. It just depends what it is and how open. You have to remember that casting directors are always kind of under somebody because we get hired by either a studio, a financing company, or an individual. And so you have to kind of follow a little bit of what they're dictating in terms of where you are. You know, but we try as casting directors, especially on a younger role or something new, we try to really, I mean, it's to our benefit, you know, to find somebody new. It really is.
That's what I was going to ask is that, you know, a lot of times, especially with films like Green Lantern and superhero films, a lot of times you hear that because the property is so established that they want to find an unknown or you know, make a star instead of finding a star. How much of it really is that ratio of going for a name versus going for somebody, you know, new?
I think on the comic book movies, if you look at that, most of the time it is going for an unknown.
Right.
We tested probably about 15 people in terms of the final testing, not all, I mean, we videotaped probably 500 people, but in the end of doing a screen test, which we did, directed by the director, almost everybody was an unknown. What people forget about Ryan Reynolds is the proposal had not come out. So while people may have known who he was, he certainly wasn't a movie star when he cast him. So, I mean, Green Lantern had 3 options on it. That alone would tell you that he wasn't where he is. What happened is, I guess you could say Warner Brothers got lucky in the sense that the minute after we cast him, the proposal came out. It was a very, very successful movie and really rose to stardom on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a star now.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm wondering about Nashville. Did you cast Nashville?
Yeah, that's before my time. Yeah, I've been with Bob to kind of the reunion of Nashville. Just so you know, before myself, Robert Altman never had a casting director. Days were different. He had an associate producer who actually worked with him up to Mrs. Parker, and including Mrs. Parker, then no longer. And the associate producer basically cast the film, because those were days where there weren't all the agents and all the lawyers and all the managers. So they would just call up people and say, hi, you want to be in the film? And then what happened when they were doing Mrs. Parker, it wasn't working, because there was just, the world had changed. There were agents and managers, and unless you went through them and you got their support, you really couldn't do much. And that's where I came in. And if you look at Altman's film, I am the only casting director on any of his films ever to receive credit.
And you casted his last film, which
Prairie Home
Companion, which I think was, I mean, he was known for having these amazing ensembles. I mean, MASH is legendary, but Prairie Home Companion was one of those films that everyone who was in it, I mean, was just an icon in their own right. Talk about casting that film and working on his last film.
That was really a very difficult film. It wasn't an expensive film. It was probably maybe all in at $3 million. And we had a lot of trouble getting financing for that, because a lot of people had never heard of the show on public radio. People didn't think it was commercial. So it took us about 3 years to get that financed. It was really important to get it financed because Bob was very ill at the time that he directed that film. And the thing that was great about it is it was very self-contained, because it was basically like we are. It was on a stage, and that was it. So he really just had to sit to direct it. And it was interesting. The first person we got was Meryl, and the second person we got was Kevin Kline. And even then, which is pretty hard to believe, we didn't have all the financing. And the guy that worked with Bob Altman, a guy named Josh Ashton, and myself, both our parents knew somebody that lived in the town where we were filming Prairie Home Companion, who had a lot of money. And so he talked to his father and I talked to my father. And we said, do you think there's any way this guy, because he loved Prairie Home Companion, we knew that he would come in for, we need $250,000. Would he come in on it? And we asked our fathers to call, and the guy said, yeah, if there was someone in it I liked, because he was a younger guy who was like 35 years old, and he didn't know, he knew who Meryl was, and he kind of didn't know who Kevin Kline was. And we said to him, okay, who do you want us to get? We'll get whoever you want. And he said, we want Lindsay Lohan. And we went, oh, okay. And to this day, I don't know if Bob knew who she was, to be really honest. But I knew her. And I called her up, and I said, I'd love you to do this role in this Bob Altman film. And to her credit, she never, I said, I want to send you the script. She said, I don't need to read it. I'll just do it for you, because I've always wanted to work with Bob Altman.
Wow. And
I give her a lot of credit for that, because without her, in all honesty, we would never have made that film. I mean, then we got Woody Harrelson, we got all these great people, but it was just this one guy who wasn't in show business. That's what he wanted. And, and so that's really how that got done. So there are things behind the scenes that you really can't imagine really could even happen. I was always amazed working for Robert Altman, how I could work for a first-time director and he could get financing in 2 seconds. And there were times where I would sit in meetings, because I was part of this team, where we were begging people to put in $250,000. So it's interesting, and he's probably one of the greatest American filmmakers.
Something tells me that guy would not want Lindsay Lohan as much as he did that.